Right now, a coup has been confirmed in Guinea-Bissau.
Police have struggled to contain the protests in towns and cities across Tanzania.
As people across Cameroon await the result of October 12th's election, presidential opposition candidate Issa Chiroma declared himself the winner.
Across Africa, governments change, presidents rise and fall, and constitutions are amended almost as often as public budgets. Yet one thing rarely changes. Institutions remain weak. Courts struggle to function independently. Parliaments act more like extensions of ruling parties, and civil services often depend on political loyalty instead of competence. This raises a serious and uncomfortable question. Why do so many African leaders fear strong institutions? Is it personal weakness, a legacy of colonial rule, a tactical political strategy, or something deeper, woven into the very foundation of the modern African state? Today, AfriEye goes to the roots of this problem, historically, politically, and structurally. Before we talk about why African leaders fear strong institutions, we must understand what strong institutions actually are. Strong institutions are the parts of the state that function independently of any single leader. They're the systems that continue to work, whether a president stays, leaves, or is replaced tomorrow. In a country with strong institutions, the courts don't serve the president, they serve the Constitution. The police don't enforce loyalty, they enforce the law. The military protects the nation, not the regime. Elections are organized by bodies that can't be bullied, bribed, or influenced. Civil servants are hired because of competence, not because they know someone powerful. In places with strong institutions, laws matter more than personalities. Budgets are transparent. Parliament can question the government without being seen as an enemy. And most importantly, the rules of the country outlive the people who created them. But in many African states, these institutions don't grow naturally. They are weakened, reshaped, and in some cases, captured entirely by those in power. This doesn't happen by accident. It happens by design. And the roots of this fear, this resistance to strong institutions, go deep into Africa's political history. To understand why many African leaders fear strong institutions today, we must step back and look at the colonial state, the political machine Africa inherited at independence. Because Africa did not inherit functioning governments. It inherited extraction systems. The colonial state was never designed to serve Africans. It was designed to control them. Its purpose was simple: maintain order, extract wealth, and protect imperial interests. Everything else, democracy, accountability, transparency, was irrelevant. Across the continent, colonial governments were built around centralized authority. One governor, one office, one chain of command, leading back to London, Paris, Lisbon, or Brussels. There were no independent courts to check abuse. No transparent bureaucracies managing public money. No parliaments that represented local people. No neutral civil service. Even the police were not created for safety. They were instruments of force, designed to crush dissent, enforce taxes, and protect colonial economic assets. In places like British Nigeria, Kenya, and Ghana, the police and local militias were used to enforce hut taxes and suppress resistance. In French West Africa, the colonial administrator, the commandant, had the power of judge, jury, and executioner all in one. In the Belgian Congo, A brutal concession system turned the entire country into a corporate plantation, policed by the forced public. These structures were never meant to empower citizens. They were built to dominate them. And in many regions, colonial powers used indirect rule, ruling through selected chiefs or local elites. These chiefs had enormous power, almost no oversight, and were answerable only to the colonial officer above them. This meant their authority flowed downward, not upward from the people. This system rewarded loyalty, not legitimacy, compliance, not competence, force, not fairness. So when independence came in the late 1950s and early 1960s, African leaders inherited states with fragile administrations, weak legal frameworks, no democratic tradition, and no culture of institutional independence. The entire machinery of government was still wired for top-down control. And here lies the turning point. Some leaders, like Kwame Nkrumah, Nnamdi Azikiwe, Julius Nyerere, and Patrice Lumumba, dreamed of transforming the colonial state into a democratic system built for Africans. But the structures they inherited were so centralized that power naturally rose to whoever sat at the top. For many post-independence presidents, the colonial state's authoritarian tools weren't just familiar, they were useful. And instead of dismantling them, many leaders strengthened them. Laws used by colonizers to suppress African movements were repurposed to suppress political opposition. Emergency powers meant for colonial security were kept in place for decades. Security agencies that once protected the empire now protected ruling parties. This historical continuity explains the present. The modern African state still carries the DNA of the colonial state, centralized, personalized, and resistant to checks and balances. And when you inherit a system built for control, not accountability, personal power often triumphs. Institutions remain weak, and leaders who enjoy centralized authority have little incentive to change it. This is a foundation on which modern African politics was built. In many African countries, the idea of strong institutions never had the chance to grow. Instead, something else took root: strong men, personal rule, governments built around individuals, not systems. Take Uganda, for example. President Yoweri Museveni came to power in 1986 with promises of democracy and a new beginning. But over time, the system adapted to him instead of the other way around. Term limits were removed, the age limit for presidents was also removed, and today, nearly 40 years later, Museveni is still in charge. Uganda's institutions, the courts, the police, the electoral commission, no longer act independently. They operate within the political space created by one man's long rule. The same pattern appears in Cameroon. President Paul Biya has ruled since 1982, for decades and still counting. During that time, institutions didn't strengthen, they weakened. Term limits? Removed. Oversight bodies? Powerless. In Cameroon, political power is not held by institutions. It is held by the president and a tight network of loyalists who manage the state like a personal estate. And then there is Equatorial Guinea. President Teodoro Obiang has ruled since 1979, the longest-serving president in Africa. In his country, institutions exist only on paper. The courts, the parliament, even the Constitution, they serve the presidency, not the people. Power flows through family, loyalty, and personal connections, not through law. This is a state where institutions are so weak that the president's son is already positioned as his likely successor. not through an election, but through inheritance. Zimbabwe gives us another example. For decades, Robert Mugabe dominated every arm of government. The ruling party and the state became one. Courts lost independence. The civil service became politicized, and the military became a political actor. When Mugabe finally fell in 2017, the institutions were so hollow that nothing changed. The system simply replaced one strong man with another, and this is the pattern. Across different countries, different cultures, and different histories, the story is the same. Leaders became stronger than the institutions meant to contain them. When a leader stays for decades, institutions don't get the chance to mature. They learn to obey. They learn to wait. They learn that power comes from the president, not from the Constitution. This is why many African states fear strong institutions, not because institutions are dangerous, but because strong institutions would make the president just another citizen, accountable, transparent, and limited. And for leaders who have built political power like a private empire, that's the greatest threat of all. Leaders do not fear institutions because they oppose development. They fear them because institutions limit their power. Take independent courts. When courts can overturn election results, prosecute corruption, or block unconstitutional decrees, they pose a direct risk to leaders who rely on loyalty networks and patronage to survive. In Uganda, for instance, attempts to challenge presidential decrees in court are routinely met with political pressure or legal reforms designed to protect the office. In Zimbabwe under Robert Mugabe, judges who oppose the ruling party face intimidation or removal. And in Cameroon, the judiciary has long existed as an extension of executive power rather than as an independent arbiter. Strong institutions also expose corruption networks. Auditor General offices, anti-corruption agencies, and investigative units threaten inflated contracts, political kickbacks, and illicit revenue streams. In Nigeria, the EFCC has occasionally pursued high-profile cases, only to face political pushback, highlighting how challenging entrenched networks can be. In Angola, after José Eduardo dos Santos left office, investigations revealed decades of hidden wealth, showing what strong institutions could uncover if allowed to function freely. Patronage is another key reason leaders resist strong institutions. Many African political systems rely on distributing jobs, contracts, and favors to maintain loyalty. Meritocratic civil service reforms, transparent recruitment, and independent oversight directly undermine this system. Kenya's attempt to reform the civil service faced opposition precisely because they threatened entrenched ethnic and political patronage networks. In South Sudan, the military payroll itself operates as a patronage network, rewarding loyalty over competence. Strong institutions also block authoritarian drift. Independent parliaments, legislatures, and constitutional courts can challenge term extensions, veto harmful legislation, and check executive overreach. This is why countries like Rwanda, Congo-Brazzaville, and Togo have manipulated their parliaments, rewritten constitutions, and co-opted courts to neutralize any potential check on presidential power. Leaders fear a system that could say no. Finally, institutions create accountability after office. Leaders worry about what happens when they leave. Without immunity, they risk prosecution, exposure, and financial investigation. Across Africa, former presidents in South Africa, Zambia, and Mauritius faced inquiries and legal scrutiny once their protection ended. Weak institutions guarantee safer exits. Strong ones make past misdeeds visible. And this fear drives leaders to manipulate or weaken systems while in power. Not all African institutions are powerless. Some resist, and when they do, they reshape history. In Ghana, the Electoral Commission stands as a model of independence. Strengthened over decades, it has managed transitions peacefully, even under pressure from sitting governments. In 2000, 2008, and 2016, contested elections were handled with integrity, proving that robust institutions can protect democracy and national stability. South Africa provides another example. During the era of state capture, the judiciary repeatedly challenged the executive, ruling against misuse of public funds and resisting political interference. Courts demonstrated that independent institutions could hold even the most powerful accountable. In Kenya, the Supreme Court made history in 2017 by annulling a presidential election. This unprecedented move demonstrated judicial independence and showed that a well-functioning institution could disrupt entrenched political power. Citizens witnessed firsthand that institutions could act as a check, even against a sitting president. Botswana presents a long-term success story. From independence, the country invested in professional civil service, transparent management of diamond resources, and a judiciary free from executive influence. The result has been decades of stability, economic growth, and low corruption, a rare example in Africa where institutions, not individuals, drive governance. These cases illustrate a simple truth. When institutions are strong, leaders cannot dominate. When they are weak, leaders become the institution themselves. Weak institutions impose a cost that goes far beyond politics. They create unpredictable business environments, higher corruption, and unstable political transitions. Public services weaken, skilled professionals leave, and foreign investment dries up. Hospitals face shortages, schools lose funding, roads crumble, and jobs vanish. National security becomes unreliable. Everyday life suffers. A society cannot rise above the strength of its institutions. When institutions fail, the state fails. And without a functioning state, neither democracy nor development can take hold. Africa's challenges are not caused by a lack of potential, talent, or resources. They are the result of systems that concentrate power and weaken oversight. Until institutions are empowered, the cycle repeats. African leaders fear strong institutions for many reasons: history, political strategy, economic interests, and a desire to maintain power. But strong nations are built not by individuals, but by systems that endure beyond them. The future of African stability, prosperity, and democracy depends on institutions capable of outlasting the people who lead them. Independence created borders and flags. Strong institutions create futures. If this documentary gave you insight into the forces shaping African politics and history, stay with AfriEye for more deep dives, fact-based narratives, and analysis. See Africa clearly. See Africa with AfriEye.